Good day, everyone, and welcome to the BMC Getting Started with the BPA Administration webinar. Today's conference is being recorded. I would now like to turn the call over to Mr. Cedric Rawls. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Good afternoon, good morning, wherever you are. Thank you all for joining the call. Today we'll cover our next best practice webinar of Getting Started with BPA Administration. As a reminder, for those who may need additional numbers, there are local numbers in the window that you can see now, and we can provide other numbers as needed. Any questions that you have, we ask that you post them in the Q&A window so that we can respond to them appropriately. At this time, I will turn it over to Tim Hill from our team, who will cover the content today. Thanks. Tim, take it away.
Great. Thanks, Cedric. Good morning, everybody, or whatever time it is where you are. Good. So today we're gonna talk a little bit about getting started with BPA administration. So the basic disclaimer is that this information is available from us, and it may change according to various reasons. But anyway, there's no guarantees or warranties on what we're saying here because it is all subject to change. So the focus today, we want to focus on what's current with BPA, which is the current version is 9.0, Service Pack 3. Most of the presentation is going to cover things that are available in 9.0, although pretty much everything will also be available at 7.5.10. And then we will be having more presentations in the future, so stay tuned. So for the agenda, we want to cover some of these things. I know there may be a few new people, in which case, it's probably a good idea to have a level set so we all understand what we're talking about. For you old-timers, you've probably seen some of this before, so you can review it or close your eyes. We're gonna cover some installation recommendations, some things that have to do with after the installation, patches, Procedure General Manager, and some getting help and troubleshooting references. If at any time you have questions, please put them in the Q&A window. That way they can be answered right away. Okay, so the first slide is basically an overview of how BPA works. So we've got a visualizer database, which is actually the central repository for all the capacity planning and performance data. And we have various collectors that collect data from various, I'm looking for my pointer here. Okay. There we go. So here's our capacity planning database, our console. We have collectors that collect data from VMware hosts via proxy. We also have Windows proxy, which collects data from Windows machines. The proxies basically only work they're basically Windows-based, and they'll only work on Windows. The proxy actually has to live on a Windows machine, and you can't use a proxy for Unix and Linux. For Unix and Linux, the arrangement is that we collect data from a standalone autonomous agent. From the data that we collect, it goes into the repository. We're able to view that data through the Perceiver component, which has some subcomponents, General Manager, Virtualization Planner. We'll cover a little bit about some of those today. And all the data that comes out of Visualizer out of the box is available, from the database comes out from Visualizer, which is another Windows-based component that runs on your desktop or a larger server. Bear with me here. Okay. So the components that make this all work is we have a service daemon that handles the communications from the console to the agent on any managed computer. So From that, it will communicate with the perform agent, which will live on the managed computer. And then the collector, which is talked to by the agent. And then the communication flows back through to the service daemon. Pretty benign stuff. Important when things don't flow right, or if you would have a problem or something, then this stuff is really helpful to figure out which component is it that's giving me grief. A little bit more about the components. We have manager, which is actually your control for your data collection and your automation. Analyze, which actually takes the data, the raw data that comes in, and gets munched up and transformed into metrics, performance metrics, capacity metrics. Predict is used in conjunction with analyze most often. And what that does is it lets you do basic modeling or answer what-if questions. You can actually get in and build a model for that. More lower-level type work, although it's very interesting. Visualizer, which takes all the information from analyze and predict, and it puts it in the repository or in the central database. Automator, which is a subcomponent of visualizer, which actually takes the information from manager and actually works with visualizer to inject the information into the database. It also performs some database maintenance functions, which at some point in your usage of BPA, you will probably use something in Automator to manage the database or to provide maintenance for it. Investigate, which is a real-time monitor, actually near real-time, and it's a component that lives in the console also. And you may or may not have used this, but it is very useful at times. So in the perceiver component, we have a viewer, which is a web-based component, which is actually the front end to the whole perceiver component. We have virtualization planner, which is, allows you to do virtualization for virtual servers or standalone servers. If you want to do sort of larger 30,000-foot capacity planning, so it's not as detailed as something you would get directly out of Predict. However, if you have a lot of machines, it's probably not likely you're going to have the amount of time that you might need to run individual Predict models against all these machines. So Virtualization Planner will let you do that on a larger scale, which can be a really big help, especially when they say, well, we need this information, we need an answer on this by the end of the day. Virtualization Planner is a good way to do that. It's very fast. It works on the data that comes back that lives in the visualizer database, as does everything else in Perceiver. General Manager, we're going to talk a little bit about this today, but basically it allows you to manage multiple consoles from a single location. Pretty cool. So I want to talk a little bit about things we do in the installation process. So one of the things that's really good to do before you start the install is take a look at the documentation. It's always a good place to start, even though you may have done this before. There may have been some changes, some subtle changes that actually can cause you a lot of irritation. So take a look at the documentation before you start. If you've got a test environment, it's always good to go play there. If you blow it up, it's okay. Nobody gets impacted. Best, you can experiment with it. You can take it apart. You can break it. It's a good way to go if you've got the resources in your environment to do it. If you don't, then another possibility to do something like that is put it on install a Windows-based version of it on your laptop or your desktop and play with it there. That way you get a good sense as to how does the product work together. get a sense of how you're going to back up your production database. Make sure you get that scheduled with the backup crew, because it's always good to have a backup of the database should something happen to it. They're not surprised by you saying, well, geez, we didn't have a backup of it and we lost all our data. That's not typically likely to happen, but it's always good to have that backup. The installation takes place on the Unix and the Windows machines, and it requires an X-Windows client and server. So I know there were previous installations where you were able to just go in and cut and paste, and you could cut and paste the URL into your browser, and that would actually allow you to do the installation, but the newer installation requires that you run X-Windows. So you need to have that all worked out before you start. It'll keep your frustration level down and make things go much smoother. And always think about when you go to do your installation, make sure you got the latest patches in the service pack after the install. So plan to put that on, because once you get this thing up into production, one of the things that always happens is you never get the time to go put up the patches or the service packs on. So if you get it done in the beginning, you're off to a good start, and then you've got some time to worry about doing it later. Or actually, you don't have to worry about it, doing it later. One of the things that comes up fairly often is, how big should your database be? So typically, and your mileage may vary depending on the amount of activity that takes place on your servers, but if you kind of plan for 1,000 to 1,500 servers per schema, you'd probably be okay. This actually works best. You'll end up with multiple schemas or multiple instances, which tend to be more expensive, but not necessarily so depending on the platform, whether you use Oracle or SQL Server. Most people just build multiple schemas. A good idea with multiple schemas on the same database instances, if you can put the schemas in different databases on different disks. So a little thought as to how you're going to spread this out, because you want to eliminate as much contention as possible. For example, if you're working in different time zones, that's maybe not as critical, because 12 o'clock doesn't happen at the same time everywhere. And typically the way the processes work is most of the data comes back around midnight, or that's the general best practice. So just something else to give some thought to. So if you'd like some more information about this, I see a little arrow that says Timothy Hill on here. Can you guys see that? Oh, that's right. You can't hear me. Okay. So if you want some more information about the visualizer sizing, you can go to this link here, and it'll give you ample information to get going on this. So another thing that you want to give some thought to is, when you go out to get the executable. So before you start, get a directory to hold the downloads. It's always better to do that beforehand, because then you can give some thought as, well, where do I want to put these things before I, parse them out and send them into my environment. Then you would actually log into the website, which is URL here. And one of the things that I find myself is that in the past it's been rather difficult to locate something that I'm looking for. So I put some information here to tell you how to find the things in the EPD site. So basically you would, locate BMC performance assurance, find and expand, and so on down the line. Find the visualizer patch, find perceiver. Now, these items here are really important if you're going to install the whole product. So you want to make sure you get all this stuff. More, when you're in EPD, there's check boxes for the files and documents that you want. You just check them off. There's two mechanisms you can get it. There's a download, which basically starts it immediately and lets you start the download. And then there's a download manager which lets you grab multiple files, and it basically sends it sends you an email with the information, and you can download it from there. So after you've got it all planned out, then we get to the installation. So again, I want to recommend that you go to the installation guide and take a look. Even if you've done it before, it's always a good idea to find out, is there really anything different that I need to know about? If possible, start the install early in the day, in the week. That way you've got more time and you're not crunched for time by the weekend, because invariably nobody's around on the weekend. At least that's been my experience when I was doing this at my own site. Get a sense as to how much time do you have to do this. If nobody cares, well then you're good to go. But if somebody has a window that you need to work around, figure out what that is, and then refer back to the installation so that you understand what's involved in case you should have a problem that you need to muck with. The other thing, and this has happened to me quite a few times, is make sure what you're installing, in the case of an agent is where it usually gets me, is make sure you put the right agent on the right box. Because sometimes if you put the wrong agent on the wrong box, it may install, but if it does install, you're going to have problems, and it's going to be a mystery because the expectation is that, hey, I just put this in, and it's not working. And so I've had this happen to me before, and I've actually seen cases where this happens to other customers too. So it's not an unusual thing to do. So just something to keep in the back of your mind. And again, as we talked about before in the pre-stages, make sure you put the latest service pack and the patches on. It's going to fix a lot of problems that you may or may not see. It's okay if you don't see them, but it's not okay if you do see them. And if you put the latest pack on, set of patches on, then it allows our development or support to work on the latest code. And typically you'll get a better response. It's always easier to fix something newer than it is for us to go backwards a couple versions and try to figure it out. Service Pack 3, which is the version that's current, is the full product installation. So you don't have to have anything installed already. So you can just go right to Service Pack 3. Here's the link for the docs that talks about the requirements. Again, I can't stress this as enough. In particular in the case of Windows, where things, typically my own experience has been, I usually get a CD or I get something to install, and I just, go install it, and I don't even bother to read the directions because I figure, well, what can go wrong? But in this particular case, it's good to take a look at the requirements and the installation instructions just to make sure, because there are a lot of moving parts, and you want to make sure you get them all covered. Okay. So things to think about after you've installed the product is you've got some logs. Excuse me. So you're not left in the dark if things don't work. So these are the locations of the logs. And, logs get created from the install. They get created from the configuration portion of the install, which will give you some additional information after the install has completed. For example, what I mean is you actually can run the install, and the interaction will come back from the screen and it will say, complete. And that's great, and then you go away and you don't read the log, which has happened to me very often because I've done this a few times. But 30 minutes later, when I'm trying to fire up some of the agents or something, and I find out something's not working, I go back and I can look at the log and say, well, what's not working right? What failed? So that's a good place. And I never know where the log is while I'm doing this. So, and I never know where the log is when I finish the install and I have to go looking in the manual for it. So it's always helpful to, to get a sense to where are the logs, even if you won't have a problem. It's always good to have that. Common operational logs is on the Unix or Linux systems, the $best1home variable, which is set, that's the default. The logs are in there, and in Windows, it's in this directory here. One of the other things that's not all that new is how to get the logs from a remote machine if you can't log in. So this is actually a really good document for that. It tells you how to get those logs without having to go to the machine. It's a pretty big deal. It's pretty nice. One of the things about your database is, you know, it's good to summarize your data. So give some thought to creating a separate summary database. There's information in the visualizer manual, in the documentation, and Automator. It's really easy to do. Just create a summary database, send your summary data there, and instead of keeping it all together with a larger portion of the database. So let's keep a longer period of time. So maybe you want to save more than 3 years of summarized data. Well, the odds are pretty good that you're not going to want detailed data for 3 years, even 1 year. So by keeping a summary, you can go back so many years and say, well, these are the trends on our systems based on, you know, depending on the business that you guys are in, and you can get a good sense as to, you know, where do things go, what months of the year are busy. From a summarized perspective, that's really good, because really what you're looking at is you're looking at the shape, so that you can tell, you know, what month is busy. Is it December, the end of the year, or is it in fall when school starts, or is it over the holidays? And that's typically predicated on your business that you do. And then again, when the database gets so big, then it gets really slow. So one of the things you want to plan to do once you get implemented is you want to use Automator to delete the detailed data out of your database over a certain period of time. So for example, if you don't believe that you need detailed data going back for 6 months and summarized data is fine, then delete the detailed data out of your detailed database. The chances are probably pretty good that you're not going to go back 6 months and build a detailed model. And summarized data is more than adequate to build a model to get a sense as to what your growth rates will be. So, and by keeping the database smaller, it keeps the processing faster. It allows you to add more nodes to the database. So, you know, there's a general benefit overall. Some of the data management options. If you're running a Windows machine, there are certain files that you don't want to delete that are available in the manager scripts property directory. And you can find it when you're building your manager run. So you don't want to delete these particular files because they're used for manager recovery. The Unix consoles also have a similar thing, and there are these files. And you know, you want to hang on to them. So you never know when the day is going to come when you might want to run a manager recovery. And if they're not there, well, then it gets kind of sticky on how to get the data back. One of the other things that's really good when you're getting started is give some thought. You know, when the product comes in, we give a whole set of standard directories that are provided with the product, which may work well, or you may find that they're a little clumsy for your use. So one of the things that you can do is, you know, give some thought to setting up a file structure that is related to the function of the tasks or processes or scripts that policies that you'll create, and keep those separate. That way it's easier to figure out, well, this analyzed file goes with this policy, it goes with this domain, it goes with this commands file. Keep them all together if you can. You may not get this the first day, you may not be ready to do this, but it's something, as you work with the product, you'll find out that there's got to, you know, you may ask yourself, is there a better way to do this? And we've got a couple examples here. Excuse me. So if you're going to set up a specialized run, try to separate that from your daily runs. So you want to keep the daily runs sacred. So If you need a short-term burst of data, you can go out and collect some data from a machine and run it as an ad hoc run. Just give it some naming convention, something different that you know that it's not a normal manager run, something that you can visually interpret if you're looking at the console, or something visually someone else could interpret if they're looking at the console as something being not quite scheduled or regular. So we have a couple examples here. So here's an example that's been used in the case of Linux or Unix. So where you've got certain types of files, you've got daily files, you know, things that go in domains, command files, workloads, ad hoc, and so on and so forth. So something like this is invaluable because guaranteed there will come a time when you have so many jobs running, it'll be hard to keep track of them. And if you don't have some kind of standard of naming them for yourself from a BPA management perspective, it'll be hard to find something when you're a little bit stressed, or at least that's what I've found. When I get a little stressed, I don't remember things as well as if I'm completely relaxed. This will make it easier to find things. In the case of a Windows machine, we have a similar type thing where we've got, you know, we put analyzed stuff in an analyzed directory. We keep everything in the local area so that we know it's local to our environment. We keep our manager runs together, subdirectory that manages, for example, we have an analyzed workload characterization we might call GM demo, and that's involved with the manager run GM demo. We have subdirectories that contain that information. It might be GM demo, manager run name, GM demo. Policies, we might have a policy that's called GM demo. And scripts, we might have a script called, probably would have a script called GM demo. So that way, when I would go in and look at a console, I can follow everything all the way along. So I can start from the manager run, and I can go to all the other moving parts, and I can find them in their particular location that's related to them. And that just goes back to what we were saying about give some thought as to how you want to set up your environment, and that can be a dynamic thing. I mean, what you start out in the beginning with may be something that you end up changing, and it's never too late to change. So another question that often is that comes up is proxy hosts. So each proxy host can support about 150 VMware ESX servers. That's not necessarily, that's our recommendation. Your mileage may vary, you know, but that's a good place to start. You can work with that. You can increase it if you find out that that works well for you and you don't have any performance deviation from what you would expect. Again, it's a dynamic thing. You kind of have to get in there and run it yourself and get a sense as to, well, how does this stuff work in my environment? More information is available here, our website. So one of the other things that you want to do is a general guideline to use when you're trying to figure out is, you know, how much space do you need? And this is a good formula to use to get you going. Very helpful. So one of the other things that's available now, actually it was 7510 is Auto Node Discovery, which actually will go out and it'll discover the nodes for you from a proxy host. And it'll basically create the domains and the policies, and it'll add the computers from the active manager run, which is kind of a cool thing. If your numbers of if the number of computers exceeds the number that you've preset in your domain policy, which is you're asked for this information in a dialog when you actually start this discovery, it will adjust it for that purpose. And you can also use a text file. So, for example, if you have a list of machines that you want to collect data on, but You don't want to collect data on all of them. There are exceptions. You could create this list, and you could feed this list to AutoNode Discovery, and it would read off the list and do that. So there are some procedural steps to run this, and this will sort of simplify it. Is first you run the AutoNode Discovery command, and then you modify the manager run that's created by the script from the output, and then you submit and you schedule the run. So, for example, in the step 1, you would actually run the command, run it in command mode or create mode, and in the case of Linux, you would run something like this on the console, and in Windows, you would run this in command line. And it'll start a dialog, and the dialog will come back, and it'll ask you for this information. So in here, we're going to talk about, and you guys probably know this from working with Windows and Unix, is the naming convention are domains in Unix, and we call them policies in Windows. So anyway, the script will come back and will prompt you for the name of the domain, the name of a manager command file, or an MSF file in Windows, and then it'll create an output directory for you. So then what you do is you take that script that's come out from the AutoNode Discovery, and you can edit it with the GUI or a text editor if you want. There are certain things that you need to change, so you need to pay attention to it. So you have to specify workload characterization. You need to also make sure that the time zone is set right. This works okay, and this works fine in Windows, but in Unix you have to actually make sure you got the time zones right. In Windows, same thing. Just make sure that the time zone will work right, but it's always good to check. You open the script and make any additional changes, and then schedule it. Step 3 is you actually schedule the script for automatic execution. There's also some more information here that talks about using AutoNode Discovery with a text file. So that's something good if you want to go a little deeper in this. And this is just kind of an overview, so this will give you sort of a taste of how this all works. So I want to talk a little bit about how to do this with a list. So if I refer back to this document here, I just want to go back and just say a little bit about this. So for example, you can use one host name per line. So that would be the host name. This would be the alias name. You can use an IP address. So your text file would look like this. And I think it's pretty much a standard file that we've seen before when we're using any kind of proxy work. Then again, you set up the manager run. So here's some good references to use. This document's been around for a little while, but virtually everything in it has either been automatically incorporated into what is now a current release of the product, or there's some good ideas of variables you can change. So by all means, help yourself to this, and I've used it for many years. It was written by, I believe it was written by Mike Pasco, who's the god of support. He's just a brilliant man. How do you create a silent install package? This is a good one. One thing I would like to add here is if you're in cases where you have a lot of machines and you have to create the silent install package, it's most likely that you're not going to want to go to each one of those machines and touch them and do the install. So you're going to want to come up with a silent install, and this is a good document to use. One thing that I would like to suggest is if you've never done a silent install, before you just go ahead and put it out there and do it, make sure you have at least gone through the manual install process first so that you get a good sense of what the silent install will do. It's certainly not as, obviously it's not as visual as what you would get with an interactive installation, but it's good to have a good sense as to what is it you're going to get from the silent install. Another good article is, well, what happens if you have too many machines that are recommended put on a proxy and you need to split them? So this is a good article for that. Okay. So patches. So one of the things that is common is, we may not always know what patch level we're at, or at least I never did. So, and I couldn't necessarily remember where to go look for them. So this information is in Visualizer, and it's good to know that it's there, and this slide will give you some sense as to where to find it. If you get a copy of the presentation, then you'll have that. Also, there's a set of VGD files, which are actually files that are customized by, I believe, by Debbie, and she's Debbie Sheets, who has actually built these files that will actually provide some additional information within Visualizer outside of the product, and they work really good, and they're based on ideas and input from customers of items that they want to see and to get data out of the database. And this is a good example of information you can get out of that VGD file. And to get new VGD files, you can get them here. More about patches. So, this is where you get the latest patches. There's information that's in there that will talk about your version and your release. So that's good. After a while, I found that I had that memorized, so that was good. So after a while, you won't need to worry about this unless it's a brand new release and you want to make sure it's in the same place. Windows has a patch tool, and Unix has a patch tool and maintenance or patch tool. And this is what the interface looks like when you start it up. So one of the ways you can determine your patch level is you can actually execute this command, and it'll bring up this interface, and it'll have these particular tabs on it, and you can take a look. Now, if you're not sure if you've got any patches, excuse me, you can click on the Uninstall Patches, and it'll come back up, and it'll tell you which patches you have, that it thinks it can uninstall. If you go in here and there isn't anything, well, then you're at the base level of the product, and if it's, if you haven't changed it in a couple years, it's probably time to put patches on. So, I want to talk a little bit about General Manager, which is a feature that's in Perceiver. So, before General Manager, or actually it might have been simultaneously, I don't know historically. But anyway, in the Windows console, which is what I use, and also in the Unix console, there is this particular report that I'm sure you've all seen. It's referred to as UCM status reports. In the Windows console, it comes up under the console tab, status. And it basically gives you information about your runs and, how to collect work, how to transfer work. It's something that's really helpful that you would come in every day and you would check. And historically, coming from not having any of this to getting some of this a few releases back, was a big help. But things have improved and developed further along the way. So in Perceiver, there's the same concept, although it's enhanced. And you may be using it now, or you may not have seen it, and you may still be working right off your console, and that's okay. It's a good idea when you get some cycles to go check out General Manager and Perceiver. But basically, it takes multiple consoles, and you can bring them all in, and you can look at all the runs from all the different consoles. It gives you the manager run information, particular node information. You can start, stop the runs. You can view the UCM reports. If you're running OSR, you can get that information, which is very detailed runs about analyze and predict, reports about how those work, collection, the processing exception report. You can take a look at the consoles, how are the consoles configured. It's actually a pretty cool variable tool. I mean, it has, varied options, is what I'm trying to say. There is some really good information here from an overview perspective to give you a sense as to how does that all hang together and how does it work. And we'll cover a little of that here. But our docs are actually improving as we go along, so this is a good spot to look. So with General Manager, you get a commonality between the consoles, and you can get, as I mentioned before, you can get all your consoles from one place, get information about the nodes, the runs, things that worked, things that didn't work. It's allowed you to figure out what's not working, what's broken, and how do you fix it. You can actually do multiple selects on recovery and stop runs, which is a good thing to be able to, in the case if you need to recover more than one run, you can do multi-selects on it, which is a good thing. And the other thing is you get some sense as to, well, how long has this hasn't been working? So that's another good thing to be able to go back and look at. So this is how it works. So you've got this General Manager client, and you have a server, General Manager servers, and these all run on the particular console that you're running, and they're basically standalones, not overly complicated from where we sit. And this is, it's good to know how it's set up because in case it doesn't work, you have a sense as to, well, what do I look at? It usually works. Okay, so how do you get going with this? Well, first you install Perceiver. You put in your consoles. You add the consoles to the General Manager. You build some runs. You schedule some runs. You check the status of the run. And hopefully you don't have too much of this, but then you can recover the runs. So if something happens to the run, some part of the processing sequence fails, you can actually go back and General Manager will actually take this stuff and put it back together for you in most cases. This is what the home screen looks like. Pretty much Perceiver stuff. Here's your categories, view counts, let's add, list nodes, whatever. Stop scheduled runs, recovered runs, console, node history, exception reports, manager run logs if you need to get read detailed. We're actually going to go through this fairly quickly. It's unusual for me to be speaking where I don't have any interaction for people, so I pause sometimes and wondering where the questions are, but I know that I can't hear you. So anyway, okay. So when you're setting this up, you need to come up with the port, the name of the console, and the port number. Once you set it up, then you can actually list the consoles that you've got running. As you can see here, I didn't have a lot of consoles to use, but I had a couple just to give you some sense. One of the most valuable things is, when you have a run and you're looking for a particular computer, how do you find it? Because in most cases, I was never able to remember which manager run this particular computer was in. So you can actually use these node filters to look for them, which is really good. The nodes are cached, so it's easy to rediscover them. You can do wildcard filtering. If you have a whole set of things that you want to work on, you can send it to a CSV file. It's actually pretty nice. You can do the same thing with scheduling runs. Again, here's the filters, so you can pull it down by various consoles. You can do it by manager runs, which is shown here, and you can filter it by a wildcard. Again, you can view all the runs from a Windows perspective. What this looks like is what you would see in the Windows console, pretty much with all the tabs. In the Unix console, it's you have the whole console, the concept of the tabs, although the bar is a little different in Linux, but it's essentially the same thing. Easy to get used to. Again, you can select a particular consoles to create a manager run. So what you would do is you can use an existing list or a policy, or you can create a new one. Just working through the tabs here. In this particular case, we would be collecting new data every day. So basically, each one of these tabs, and we won't go through all of them because there's a whole bunch, but they're basically the same things that you would, if you're using the product today, you would be seeing in similar locations. On the adding computers, so we have these other tabs that let you make your choices as to how do you want to find the particular machines. You've got your policy name or list name. You've got your policy directory. Where do you keep your policies? This goes back to the naming conventions that we talked to before. And so you can see if you have something like, for example, if you kept your policies in a policy directory, then this would always say policy. And you could, if you were gone for 6 weeks and doing something else and you came back and you said, well, why is this running out of this directory when it should be a policy directory? And that's a pretty good indication as to why it's not working. So going back, that's one of the reasons to keep track of your files. And your console data repositories, standard items that you're asked for already. And so what happens is it brings up a list. It wants to know the name of the proxy, and then it'll go out to the proxy, and then it'll say, okay, well, what domains do I pick up the proxy? And you check one of those. And then it'll give you a list of nodes to select from. And you can just check those boxes if you want to discover those nodes. In the case of agent machines, it's very similar. You still get another list. You can discover nodes by IP address, and it'll go and it'll pull those out. Or you can import your list from a text file, which is pretty useful. Same thing, you get a list, import mode from file, import from list. Here's your list. So you can schedule existing runs that are there. So the schedule runs that run in your default repository, or you can find a run here. Too bad this arrow doesn't, turn. I don't think it does. No, it doesn't. It's just one direction. So you can find a run in a different location if it's not where you expect it to be. So when recovering runs, there's a couple views. There's a summary view and a detailed view. So the summary view is good if you want to go and see what first failed. It sort of gives you a high-level overview of what's going on, and a detailed view. And if you're in the process of recovering runs, you can see the status of whatever of the runs that you're recovering. But in either case, the runs can be recovered from either view. So once you get used to doing it in a certain process that works for you, then you can do it from that window. So exception reports are available in both views, which you've probably all seen those already if you're using the Windows console or the Unix console. You can filter by console run and dates. Here's a better view of what that actually menu bar looks like. Here's an example of one of my grand runs that failed. So basically, and it gives me a message, it couldn't locate the entry for the manager run, and it was looking in this directory here. So it lets me get some more information about that, and here is I was actually looking at it with the detail, and I was curious as to like, what kind of error do I get for this? So I clicked on the hyperlink, and I got some additional information about this, which is pretty cool. Basically, the exception report. There was more information down here, but I was sort of limited on real estate to put it up here. But I believe there's another screen of that. This is an example of a complete run. Not much to be said about when it works, but it is complete, so you can actually check from this. You can actually check things from here to find out how they've progressed or failed, or it gives you some history as to the last time they were recovered. The node history report is really good because, again, it gives you the opportunity to hyperclick on the particular errors. Like you get some collect errors. These are messages that come from collect. These would be messages that come from transfer. And these would be messages that would come from processing, like Visualizer or Visualizer or some other reason, and they're hyperlinked. If you need to, if you want to send a file to show somebody else, or if you want to take the file to the coffee shop to read, what work you got to do, then you can print it out, take it with you. Or although nowadays, I guess you can just take your computer to the coffee shop. So shows how old I am. Okay, so in the case of the warning messages, if you hyperclick on them, it'll give you the information about the particular warning. It'll tell you the missing groups that were missing out of that particular collection run. It also will give you more detailed information. Looks like this one didn't come out real well. But anyway, this keyword is something that you can actually use when you're searching our knowledge base to find out, what's going on with this run, to give you more information. This whole mechanism is really a good thing because with the advent of improved messaging, where it's been tied to this, you can actually get some remediation, which I think comes out here now. So in the current version, what I have found there's I think 120 some IDs, and each one of these IDs obviously has a different severity, error, keyword. Gives you something that you might see in the log, or you probably would see in the log. It gives you an explanation, which is really helpful, whether you use General Manager or not. I mean, if you're looking at a log or anything, this gives you a good sense as to what's going on with this. Gives you some ideas as to how to debug this, which is really good. I mean, the thing about support is you can call support and we'll help you, which is a great thing. However, if there's a time lag, for example, if you call support in the morning but you don't hear back from support till the afternoon, you've got a time lag, and maybe you're in a hurry, you can actually take a look at some of this stuff, and actually you can maybe figure it out yourself. And by the time support calls, you can say, well, I already figured it out, and this is what I need. Just some examples from some common messages. Collector registration, can give you some workarounds. You guys are lucky. I'm not going to go through 122 of them. Not happening. Certain other metric group not available, one shots. And basically, so this is a really good thing, and this information is available from the hyperlinked information. It comes up in the little boxes. Exception reports, which is another category on the screen for General Manager. It basically shows information about the collection. Why didn't it work? What's missing? Why didn't it transfer? What happened in the processing with the Visualizer files, or maybe hardware tables were missing? Population errors. It takes the information from Automator. So all the components will have the available information in the exception report, which is which is really a good place to start if you're having any kind of an anomalous behavior on any of your runs. Just an example of the exception report that comes out from a particular node. There's within the general manager. And from here, you can also do recovery, and you can also do the script properties. So you can go back in and see, well, why did this fail? Did I have the wrong parameter specified? Manager run logs. We've probably all looked at these, but it allows us to view them from here, which is good, very convenient. The manager consoles, just generally how to do it is, things that you can use is you can use the UCM status reports, best one manager, process day out file, exception reports. So there's another component that's called General Manager Lite. That's an adjunct component or supplemental component. And what it does is it takes all the information from all the BPA consoles and gathers all the logs for you. In the case of Unix or Linux, you can schedule a script to run daily. And if you run this daily, you'll get a pretty good idea of what's going on a daily basis through your entire environment over a period of time. It's compatible with the back releases 7.5.10, 9.0, and it'll be more what's the right word? It'll be in 9.5, and it'll be I can't think of the right word, but anyway, it'll be in 9 to 5. Basically, it does collection, transfer, and population information. It also tracks the information that goes to BCO. So that's a pretty big deal because if you're not using BCO right now, the chances are maybe good that you'll be using it in the future. And you may be using it integrating with our other products with BPA. So one of the challenges you have is if something goes awry in the BCO and maybe you're not seeing some information and you want to know why. Well, one of the places you'll be able to look is you'll be able to look at this report and get some determination. It's like, did it happen in BPA, and where in BPA did it happen that I didn't get this data passed all the way down the line to BCO? It'll save us a lot of time, save you a lot of time, because maybe it's just a simple case of the data is not in the BCO because there was a failure in the manager run, or maybe the population failed. But you'll be able to check this in one place, and this report will give you that information. Pretty cool idea. There's more information that's available with this KA. So to get this working, there's an automation script that's available from here. The information will be included in a future BPA 9 service pack. It's available in 7.5.10 Service Pack 2, Cumulative Service 2. Support will know where that is. There's a script that prompts you for information. You just go through the script. You reply to the queries from it, and then you run this, and that'll get it going. Just on a side note, what it also does is it creates some output charts for you, and this is an example of it, and you can see this. It's actually pretty far out. So here's your BPA configure nodes, right? So there's a bunch of them in this one here. So and here's your legend over here, and then if you drop down on here, the nodes that collected. And by the way, this chart isn't necessarily symbolic of a perfect environment. It's just an example, because of course everything would be in the same line, but. Bad joke. Okay, so then you've got your nodes that actually transferred here, and the nodes that actually got processed, and the ones that got put into BCO. So of course, it would all be in BCO. They would all be up here. But anyway, just to give you a sense, and then you can get this information for individual consoles, and your General Manager Lite will actually put this information out for you automatically by using that. And as I mentioned, more will be available in 9.5, and there will be a service pack for it or a patch for it. There will be a patch for it that you can use in 9.0. So that would be a pretty cool thing to use if you've got all these moving parts, and it's a good place to be able to pinpoint what's going on them. Some common useful articles. Since there are a lot of missing parts to performance assurance, it's good to get some sense as to, how do I fix this if it's not working? So these are things that you can search for in the knowledge base, or you can just go to the hyperlink. Basic ideas to fix the BPA servers, data transfer, collection issues. And some of this information is going to be available in those exception reports, and some of it's going to be in the node history reports that we looked at in General Manager. Some of the remedial steps that you can take. Service team and problems, initial debugging of perceive. One that if you've done this a couple times, you don't need to know how to do it, but if you've never done it, it's good to know how to get things to the FTP site. All the components have some kind of touch-sensitive help by clicking on a help button, or in some cases there's a question mark icon that you can click on. Our online doc is here. I encourage you to go check it out. I'll be frank, when I first started using the online documentation, I was the old PDF type of guy, and that was very convenient. But I found that over a period of time, I'm actually able to find things easier on the online documentation because it's all in one location, and I can do a search. And the documentation has greatly improved, and it will continue to evolve and improve. So by all means, go check it out. There's lots of good stuff. It's all in one place. You don't have to open multiple manuals. You don't have to figure out what manual it is. Search the knowledge base. You can sit there all day long and search if you want. There's lots of articles that will give you ideas as to how to resolve problems, questions that you have. If you're looking for something in particular and it's not there, let support know and we can help. And that would be us here. Okay, so I just want to kind of remind you a little bit about one of the things that we need when you open a ticket is a description of the problem that will help us, figure out what's going on. So in a lot of cases, a support person may already have the answer to the problem, but being able to interpret what you've provided as in the way of input and problem description, it may be a challenge if it's vague. So if we don't have a clear description of the problem, and think about, and I know this is a very primal, but think about explaining it to your significant other about your problem. How would you explain it to them? Because, of course, they will have no reference to the problem, of course, and they know nothing about BPA. But just, bear in mind that typically we're not living in your space, and we're not living in your head. So when you have a question with support, the more information you can provide us, the better off you will be, because we'll be able to handle your query faster. So we really want to help you get going. It is really important to us that you be able to use the products, and the other thing is that you enjoy using the products, otherwise you wouldn't be doing this. So the best description that you can give us to help us get going would be good. So some of the common things, and I'm sure you guys, we drive you crazy sometimes. We ask for this and this and this and this, and oh, why do you need so much? But sometimes we do. We just don't have enough information from your description, and we just have to get more. So certainly the product version, the platform, the patch levels, if you know what those are. If you don't, we can find them in the log. But if anything you can give us, the screenshots, great. So if you have an expectation that you should see something that looks like this, but it looks like that, send us both and explain, hey, this is what's going on. I expect to see this because this is in the other release, this is in the new release. They don't match up. What's going on? Collections not working right, logs, the BPA logs, whether it be a proxy server or an agent, that's great information to have. Actually, we almost always ask for that unless it's something we can determine without a log. UDR data, which is the raw data that comes, so maybe we could recreate the problem on our end. Visualizer file, same thing. We can take that and we can run that into our environment, see if we can reproduce the problem. Automator log, real helpful if something has gone wrong with Automator. Usually pretty obvious. You could probably figure that out yourself, but it might be something we would ask for. UCM status log. So these are kind of things that are useful. So if you can anticipate, if you have a sense as to where the problem might be, but you can't quite figure out what it is, send that along. We've got plenty of space. Additional documentation. As I mentioned before, the performance assurance doc is here. The search capability is great. The communities is a really good thing. If you're not using communities because you haven't had a lot of time, when you get a second and you're looking for something to do, go out there and check it out. There's a lot of information from other people like you and some people like us from the company, from BMC. But there's other practitioners that are writing things out in the communities too, and it's a good place to post a question. Other previous best practice seminars are located out on the community site, and this is a page. If you're not registered for the community site, I encourage you to do that. It's not really hard. It's web-based. Okay. So this is the part where I would say, are there any questions? But since I can't hear you, I want to thank you for spending the time and listening to me talk. And I hope the information was useful. And I wish you well in your capacity management roles. And thank you very much.
So thanks, Tim. Everyone as well, thanks for joining and paying attention. We will have future webinars, and as you all have received the invite for this one, you'll receive the invite for future webinars. In addition, we will be posting the recording and content on our community site in the next couple of days, as well as the Q&A information as well. Thank you all very much, and have a wonderful rest of the day or morning or evening, wherever you are.
And thank you. That does conclude today's presentation. Thank you for your participation.